Nigeria is working to project a new stand of power with other countries of the world, most especially China, being the second biggest economy in the world. China is ready more than ever to expand spheres of diplomatic and economic ties with Nigeria, and both countries want to create mutually beneficial deals by narrowing their differences in order to go beyond normal diplomatic relations.
Nigeria and China are hoping to increase volume of bilateral trade as they intensify areas of cooperation between the two nations. This was the outcome of the first edition of Nigeria Governors Investment Forum held in Guangzhou, China. And this is meant to foster transnational investments between Nigeria and China. Participants from the two nations conducted in-depth discussions and case sharing on trade relations. For long, the greatest pain in the neck of local farmers remained the non-availability of fertilizer. Where the critical input was available, its price was beyond farmers' reach. Rural farmers naturally paid more because of the added cost of transporting produce from the rural areas to the city centers. But the situation seems to be changing as a memorandum of understanding has been signed by Nigeria and Morocco for the supply of phosphate to rejuvenate agriculture by making fertilizer available and affordable. The deal, consummated last December for the production of 1 million tons of fertilizer, has started pushing possibilities into the hands of farmers and operators of the local fertilizer industry. The Nigerian economy has strong attachment to United Kingdom. Since Nigeria got independence from Britain in 1960, both nations have remained key trading partners in Commonwealth Group. The Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce has pledged to remain a key driver of initiatives aimed at fostering and increasing bilateral trade and investments between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. We now wonder how the exit of UK from EU will affect these bilateral relations. The Egyptian ambassador-designate to Nigeria, Assem Hanafi, is equally worried over the low volume of trade between the two countries. Hanafi stated this when he visited Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He expressed his country's willingness to increase the volume and value of trade with Nigeria, adding that there are untapped potential for both countries. As global economies continue to experience dwindling revenue while investors remain skeptical about investment destinations, the South African government is seeking ways to deepen bilateral trade. South Africa's Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, who led the outward selling and investment mission to Nigeria, says economic collaboration and partnership between African countries can stem the tide.
All right, let's discuss this further. And joining me in the studio to do that is the Chief Economist, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Nigeria, Dr. Andrew Nevin. Many thanks for your time, Andrew, on Business Nigeria. Yes, I'm sure you heard that report. A lot of bilateral relations Nigeria has had with different countries, China, looking at the U.S. Of course, we know that President Trump wants or has asked many countries to look inward. And looking at Brexit, first off, assess the level of these relations Nigeria has had with other countries.
Well, let's start where the clip started with China. I mean, China and Nigeria hasn't been as strong a relationship as other African countries with China, but it's obviously increasing. But I think that it's important in the China relationship that we make sure that we get value from it. In particular, there's no benefit to us to just have Chinese workers come and build infrastructure. We need to make sure we produce employment here. And then I think in some select spheres, the Chinese can be great partners. So with the railroad, with building out some infrastructure like the ports or building out the airlines. But I don't think they're going to be the major trading partner of Nigeria going forward. If I looked at another country that wasn't mentioned, let's talk for a minute about India. If you actually look at who's the most natural economic partner for Nigeria, or the most similar, in many ways it's India. Lots of similarities in terms of climate, hardworking people, emphasis on education. So I see that the ties with India need to deepen. And there's a lot of business models in India that can be very applicable to Nigeria. But I think all of this also highlights Nigeria is a big country. So by 2050, we're going to be the third most populous country. So we need to play on the world stage in a big way. So we need our relationship with China. We need our relationship with India. with Britain, which I'll come to in a minute, with the United States on that. But let's talk about Brexit for a minute. It's I remember almost a year ago when the Brexit vote happened, we were all quite shocked at it, and Britain stood up and said, okay, we've had the vote, we're moving to Brexit. I think we've seen in the last few months this is going to be a very, very difficult situation. So Britain has come out, and the High Commissioner to Nigeria, for example, Paul Arkwright, has come out very clearly and said, look, we're committed to Nigeria. We want to deepen ties, deepen trade ties, deepen investment. And there's obviously great affection between Nigeria and the UK.
And the UK, okay.
But the problem is that the UK is going to be distracted. I mean, you can see even from the headlines this morning, major issues on how they're going to deal with the demands of the Europeans for payment to exit, what's going to happen to British citizens in Europe, etc. So it's hard to see Britain having the attention that they're going to be able to give to Nigeria.
Okay, exactly. That takes me to that part. Of course, Nigeria is having this relationships with different kind of countries, but do you think the country is actually taking from the potential of this relationship, or is it utilizing that relationship, or are they being exploited?
Well, I think that actually compared to other African, sub-Saharan African nations, Nigeria's in a very strong position. It's a big country, a proud country, well-educated country. So there have been some African countries, which I won't name here, but have really suffered at the hands of the Chinese, say, in terms of how they've come in and played in the economy. I'm not worried about that here. What I am a bit worried about is that when we had the boom times, we didn't pay much attention to other countries. Now we've had the difficult times and we're consumed with our own internal issues. So I think we have a long way to go on these bilateral relationships. And I think we need to realize we need other countries to be successful. We need some technology, we need markets, we need investment. So we need to build up those relationships. And I think we need to be very honest here. I was looking at a chart the other day, and it showed the top 75 countries in the world and their brand image. And our brand image is last. So we start from a very difficult position. I think the people that know us, that come to Nigeria, they recognize the potential, they have a great love for the people, they see where we could go. But the people that have never been to Nigeria, all they have is that negative brand image. So in terms of all of these relationships, I think one of the things the nation needs to work on is what are the steps that we can take. Now, of course, we just had the boxing match on Saturday, and Anthony Joshua, Nigerian boy, becoming world champion. I mean, what a fantastic ambassador.
That could help in the long run, to build the brand.
And when we were, the vice president spoke at the platform on Monday, and he started out by talking all the amazing accomplishments of Nigerians around the world. So we have a basis, but we really need to work on our brand image. Exactly.
Talking about this difficult time of dwindling revenue Nigeria faces, so can this economic collaboration and partnership stand the tide?
Well, we think it can. I mean, we've consistently said Nigeria should be getting a lot more investment. People are working hard on the ease of doing business, and we've talked about it here on the show several times. So that's improving. We'll get the investment. As I said, I think India is a great example where they're going to bring business models that serve Nigeria well. And as we get that investment, we're going to move forward. But I think a couple of other regions or countries that are critical to us to think about. One is just the ECOWAS in West Africa. We haven't done a very good job of integrating. And the truth is, Ivory Coast had a lot of difficulties with its civil conflicts, but that's over. And they're booming now. And they have a very clear strategy of integrating Francophone Africa, so Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. They understand their role to play in all of that. And I think we need to make sure we're not left out. So we have Ghana, which is an English-speaking country, but it's separated by two small French-speaking countries. But I think we need to take a lot more interest in integration in the ECOWAS or West Africa region. Okay, integration in the ECOWAS West Africa region. But you mentioned India. You said we have almost the same climate, and they could bring in the models for us to have this relationship. But let's look at the environment generally, especially Nigerian environment. Is it business friendly to allow this relationship to thrive? Well,
That's
it hasn't
the
been.
theme,
It hasn't been business friendly. We know that. We know the ease of doing business. We're ranked 169th. But there's I think the big difference between 2 years ago is there really is the political will that we need to become more business friendly. But other countries have gone through this, including India. I mean, in the 1990s, India was a very poor business environment. Now it's growing at more than 7%. It will be the world's biggest economy in our lifetime. It'll eventually pass China, which will pass the U.S. fairly soon. So, there's a lot of potential, and I think we should.
Well, that's actually very good to hear if it is coming from India.
Yes, no, India is doing very, very well, but they started in the 90s, as I said, in a very poor business position. So, this is fixable, and we know how to fix it.
Okay, we know how to fix it. Let's look at interconnectivity and transit facility for prompt access to trade operations. How would you rate Nigeria?
Well, we know our infrastructure is not good. We know our ports are very weak, but there's plans on the drawing board for new ports, which is probably the best way to do it. As I said, I think that the whole infrastructure plan should be thought of on a West Africa basis. So interesting, again, the Vice President was speaking, when he spoke on Monday, he mentioned that because of the increase in rice production, we're actually exporting rice north. So, what infrastructure, what roads do we need to put in place, what railroads to put in place that? There's a project that we probably haven't paid enough attention to, which is the Abidjan-Lagos corridor. How to make that corridor, coastal road, eventually a railroad, work effectively, the borders work effectively, people can move, goods can move. That will really help our economy. Okay,
I'm sure that the PricewaterhouseCoopers is actually watching the government and seeing these activities, especially when we're talking about the ERPG, that's talking about the Economic Recovery Growth Plan. Do you think the government is actually working in the right direction in this area of bilateral relations?
Well, I think that, as I said, there hasn't been enough attention paid to it. So now they're just starting to pay more attention to it. And I think there is a genuine commitment in the federal government to improve these bilateral relations. I think they're aware of the brand image. I think the challenge is going to be, as I said, we're a big country, so we have to work on the bilateral relations with many nations. Do we have the bandwidth to do that? If I had to present, say, I think a cause for concern a little bit is our relationship with South Africa. So we are the two biggest economies in sub-Saharan Africa. Both of our economies are doing poorly. Our relationship is not good. At some level, we're competitors. We would like to be the financial center for sub-Saharan Africa. So a little bit uneasy and not a very good relationship right now.
Yes, I wouldn't want you to go before, because I would like you to comment about the World Bank concerns concerning the multiple exchange window, of course, which is maybe affecting some of the issues when it concerns Nigeria exporting to other countries. But that will be after the break, Andrew. You'd have to stay with us on that. To stay with us on Business Nigeria. We'll be back soon. It's Business Nigeria. We're talking Nigeria's bilateral relations with other countries of the world. And I've been speaking with the Chief Economist, PricewaterhouseCoopers Nigeria, Dr. Andrew Nevin. All right, Andrew, before we went on that break, I said I was going to be talking to you about the World Bank concerns about Nigeria's multiple exchange window. Of course, blaming it on the foreign exchange regime. What's your view about these concerns? Because I know the government has already said, oh, we cannot float the Naira. It's going to kill a lot of Nigerians. And of course, there's been so much of intervention in that area. What's your view generally?
Well, I think that, I mean, the ERGP's already come out and said the direction of travel is a market-determined exchange rate. So that is where we need to move to. The problem is that these windows have, for players in Nigeria, involved in Nigeria, companies, individuals, personal travel allowances, I mean, the CBN's opening of these windows have really helped because it's eased some of that pressure. It's reduced the gap between the parallel rate and the official rate. The problem, unfortunately, is that for people who are outside of Nigeria, who are thinking about investing, when they look at all these multiple windows, all they see is confusion, so they stay away. And if you look at our, both our foreign portfolio investment and our foreign direct investment over the past 5 years, it's collapsed. Now we're in a position where we need that investment to grow. I mean, we basically, PwC, our view is we need $40 to $50 billion a year of outside investment to be able to grow at least 5%. So we need to attract that investment, and the only way we're going to get there is if we actually get to this market-determined exchange rates.
Okay, another thing that cause for concern is the fact that this intervention, the money for this intervention is actually taken from the reserves. And we could see from reports today that the crude oil prices are falling. The crude oil prices have been able to help shore up the reserves. But how can the government sustain this drive, this intervention, if the monies are taken from the reserves?
Well, I think that goes back to the point. The only way to have a strong Naira is if people want the Naira. And the only way people will want the Naira is if they know if it's convertible. So the policies we have right now in a way guarantee we have a weak Naira. So what are the other sources of foreign exchange? I mean, this is the biggest potential market on the planet. People want to invest here. There's trillions of dollars of investment earning negative interest rates in the world. It wants to find a better home. So Nigeria can be that better home, and that will create the inflow of dollars that will allow us to develop the economy. But you're exactly right. If we rely on the oil inflows, I think it's very likely the only direction of travel is oil is going to go down. Iran's going to ramp up production. Libya production is going to come back. People are going to start to use electric cars. So the future of using oil to fund our FX requirements is a pretty bleak one.
Thank you. Dr. Andrew Nevin, Chief Economist, PricewaterhouseCoopers. We appreciate your time on Business Nigeria.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.